Hello, subscribers. Before I begin, I gotta get the elephant out of the room. If you actually follow my channel for some reason, you may be aware that sometime during my review of the Apocrypha, my computer stopped working. Specifically, it happened after I updated it, and then it just wouldn't start. It would just go to a black screen anytime I tried to start. And in order to fix that, I had to completely reinstall my OS. Luckily, I was able to back everything up beforehand, but what I couldn't back up was my saved passwords, which includes my login info to 11 Studios, which is why you're hearing this voice instead of the text-to-speech I usually use, because I have no idea how to get back into it. I tried the forgot password option, but apparently it looks like I did not use my normal Hotmail email address for that one, which means I used my Gmail, which I literally only have because certain websites do not accept Hotmail. So I don't even know what my Gmail is. So until I figure that out. What happened? Oh, hang on. Anyway, as I was saying, we're forced to use this voice for the foreseeable future until I can get that fixed. And today's episode is perfect for a video like that, because it's just me ranting about stuff that I hate, or just opinions I strongly hold. I've got about 5 or 6 to go over. So, things that grind my gears.
You know what really grinds my gears?
Number 1, naming generations. For some reason, society has this obsession with naming the generations that people belong to. And this started somewhere around World War I, as far as I know, where that generation was called the Greatest Generation, which sounds stupid and very ego-inflating, but as a One Piece fan, I can't help but have some newfound respect for it. Because if you don't watch One Piece, then you wouldn't know that the generation which the main cast belongs to is called the Worst Generation. So I can't be too annoyed by that one. Next, we have the generation born right as World War II ended. The Baby Boomers, which were named after the baby boom that happened after World War II. Which surprised me to find out, and it could be an anachronism, that the baby boom lasted 20 years. Like, I know the generations encompass 20 years, but the fact that a boost in baby production lasted for an entire 20 years, it's a little suspicious, really. I feel like whoever wrote what I read on the internet probably didn't understand how it all worked. But it's fine. I don't want to go checking birth rates. I don't even know how to check birth rates for over 20 plus years. But that's fine. So that generation was called Baby Boomers after the baby boom. Makes sense. Moving on to Gen X. Simple name, no issues. It doesn't mean anything. It's just a label for the sake of being a label. And that's fine. I've got no issues with that. Except for the inconsistency. If you're going to switch back and forth, no. If you're going to do a label, if you're going to name the generations, do it either with the proper name that has some meaning behind it, or with a label that is literally just a label and has no meaning behind it. Don't go switching back and forth between the two, which is why Gen Y should be called Gen Y. We are not millennials. We were not born, we were not born in the millennium. You can't name a generation after an event that hasn't happened yet. I hate that I can't just type the button and have my face change. I have to pause the video. Well, I paused the video anyway. I paused the recording anyway, but I have to click on the window, which I will always click off the window in order to unpause the recording, so I have to be very intentional when I make faces. Anyway, millennial is such a stupid name for a generation unless that generation was born in the year 2000. No earlier, no later. And I will not accept that. If you want to call me Gen Y, that's fine. That's just a label for label's sake. It's not offensively stupid. And it sucks because millennial is actually one of the better names for a generation. It sounds pretty cool, at least compared to the others, but it makes no flippin' sense. Do not call anybody who was born before the year 2000 millennial. It does not match. Next we have Gen Z slash Zoomer. That's fine. No, that's just using the Z to make a name. The name itself has no meaning. It's just a random Z word. And then Gen Alpha, which is, again, label for label's sake. Keep on with that track. Label generations just with labels that mean nothing other than distinguishing them in the line, and that will be a good track. But for the generations that come before, just everybody get into the habit. Don't call Gen Y millennials. Call us Gen Y. Or maybe figure out a word that begins with Y. There is also some side issues to go with this, like people using generations as insults, like boomers. Like people are obviously a lot of the time using the word boomer on people who are not baby boomers. And then there's the older people complaining about the younger generations, and this whole naming generations feels a little like a class warfare, as it were. But I can't say that that's my main argument at all. I hate it specifically because your names have to actually connect to what you're naming them after. If you're not born at the turn of the millennium, you are not a millennial. End of story. Let's move on to the next point of contention, which is the term JRPG. JRPG means Japanese role-playing game. Two problems here. One, what is it that makes it specifically Japanese? Like 90% of video games come from Japan, yet nobody ever calls Mario a J-platformer. No, because that's stupid. There's nothing inherently Japanese about turn-based fighting mechanics. The very first time I heard the term JRPG, I assumed, logically, that it meant RPGs that were never released outside of Japan, like the Mother series, which we only got Earthbound out of, and I don't know if that was Mother 1. I'm going to assume for the sake of this video that it was Mother 1 that got translated into Earthbound, but Mother 3 never got an official translation. So it is a Japanese-only RPG, a JRPG. That makes sense. Calling any random turn-based strategy RPG a JRPG makes no sense. Final Fantasy is not a JRPG. It is just an RPG. If you want a way of specifying that this particular RPG has you getting into random battles and fighting in a turn-based system, figure some other name out. Just call it a turn-based RPG, TBRPG. Fine, that would work. At least that would make sense. I absolutely reject calling any video game a JRPG. I can't even call Mother 3 a JRPG because the term has been ruined for me. Okay, now gonna slow things down, take a break. My next topic is actually pretty random, and I'm not nearly as pissed about this one. It's just a random tidbit I came up with to fill video, but I think it's a good one. Long time ago, early in my career of working jobs, maybe not too early, but early enough that I wasn't consistently wearing deodorant, the boss pulls me aside and tells me other people have been complaining about you stinking. Now, of course, I have no issue people telling me that I stink, if I stink, which I probably did. My issue is the way she just said other people and wouldn't even name the other people. Like, two thoughts are going through my head at this point. I didn't hear anything from them. Nobody else complained to me about my stench. Stench sounds to me like you're just making it up. And the other thought, why would you make this up? Why wouldn't you? Can't you smell me? Can't you just come out and tell me that you think I stink? That you're complaining? You're the boss. You can complain to me about my stench. You don't have to put the blame on someone else complaining about it. It just comes off very dishonest and really just makes me not want to take the complaint seriously. Like, if I could have proven that she was lying about other people complaining, then I probably would have confronted her about her lying. And if she wasn't my boss, I would have just completely ignored the complaint. Like, let's say some coworker said, oh, some random person, not a customer, because that would be reasonable, but some other random employee that I won't name has complained about your stink. I'm not going to take that complaint seriously. For the record, I do now wear deodorant regularly when I go out. But just friendly advice to everyone out there. If you're going to complain about something they did, or whatever, actually complain. Don't try to offhand the complaint onto some mysterious third party, because it just kills your credibility. Alright, this next one's a bit of a... Well, first it's two things. The Last Jedi and Game of Thrones. And might be a bit controversial. First, let's start with Game of Thrones. I liked Game of Thrones, including the ending. Thought it ended really well. No complaints, no notes. And it baffles me that people complain about it, and some think there's character assassinations going on. No, it was all fine. Now, I'm not recommending Game of Thrones. It was a very good show in a sense, but obviously it's not Christian. It has excessive amounts of nudity. Not as much nudity as South Park would have you believe, based on how Butters talks about it, but still a lot of nudity. So I can't recommend people watch it, and you're probably in a good position if you can actually avoid watching it. I certainly haven't watched the prequel, House of Dragons, because it's a prequel, and prequels are just so oftenly done bad. Ironically, the best prequel I can think of is actually the Star Wars prequels, which is weird to say because I don't think those were all that well done. But it didn't feel like they suffered too much. I mean, they did, but they didn't suffer too much from prequelitis, which is constantly trying to introduce or reference characters from the main story that it's a prequel to. Prequels really need to stop doing that. But since we're talking about Star Wars, let's talk about The Last Jedi. Force Awakens and Last Jedi were good movies. There is some bastardization fan fiction called Rise of Skywalker that I refuse to accept because it directly contradicts the movie that came just before it, and I haven't even watched it. Just the name alone contradicts The Last Jedi. Because there is no Skywalker. The Skywalker line is dead. So any arguments I make for Last Jedi being a good movie has nothing to do with the Rise of Skywalker crap. I refuse to watch that one. Now this part might be better if I had actually found videos complaining about The Last Jedi, so I have some sort of point to go off of. But like the first complaint is that Rey is a Mary Sue. The problem with that complaint is that she's Mary Sue just as much as Luke Skywalker is. In fact, he might even be more of a Mary Sue. Oh, you want to complain about how Rey Skywalker... Why did I just call her that? I would have liked Rey to be Luke's daughter, though that itself may have been a problem if it had actually happened. If they didn't give a good explanation for why he just left her on the planet. But anyway, so Rey can fly the Millennium Falcon like an expert. Okay, so what? So can Luke. Luke flew a X-Wing fighter expertly without any previous training. People just have general knowledge of how to fly ships, apparently, in Star Wars. And this is amplified by the Force. The saying that some people try to start about the Force is female is certainly cringe and not good, but there is a modicum of truth to it, in that the Force relies on feeling. You don't logically think through picking up the stones. You have to feel it. When Luke is using the Force to shoot the Death Star vent, he's not doing calculations in his head to figure it out. He's feeling it. And women are much more feeling-oriented than men are. This is why Rey is so good with the Force. Now, this is a double-edged sword because these kind of magically improving females to be stronger than men tends to be bad storytelling, but that's Star Wars. That's the Force. It was built into the foundation of the story from day one. People complain that Rey should not have been able to beat Ken, or Ben, Kylo Ren. Wow. Anyway, that she should not have been able to beat Kylo Ren because he had so much more experience. But on the one hand, yes, he was injured, and I did hear a good argument why the injury shouldn't have mattered. It's a fine argument, but injury is still injury. But also, lightsaber duels do not rely on experience as much as they rely on the Force. Luke Skywalker never had a day of lightsaber training. He had Force training. You see him training with a lightsaber in the first episode, and what he's doing is trying to block lasers while blindfolded. There's no technique involved. He's not being taught techniques. He's just being taught to feel the Force. Same on Dagobah. He's never taught any techniques. He's just taught to feel the Force. Now, there is a lot of exercise that's involved, but here's another thing between Luke and Rey. Rey was most likely a lot more fit than Luke. Luke was living with his aunt and uncle, just helping on the water farm. Rey, on the other hand, was living on her own, doing odd jobs to stay alive. The worst she could be is malnourished, but she was in a position to be much more fit than Luke, therefore she would not have needed the physical training. In fact, the fact that she had to raise herself, you can maybe complain about it forcing you to suspend your disbelief about how she could raise herself, but the fact that she did already puts out any of this Mary Sue nonsense. She knows how to fly the ships because it's pretty common knowledge, and she knows all these stories and how to fix things, because what else is she going to do with her time? Now, there can be some valid complaints about The Last Jedi, specifically with the cringe slavery part, and the fact that that girl whose sister died should have been confronted, or should have confronted, the captain who actually got her sister killed instead of Finn. Those are valid storytelling complaints. But I really don't think they're big enough to trash the entire movie. Other people like to complain that you can't ram a ship into another at hyperspeed, because if you could, then everybody would be doing it, which is a really dumb argument. Ships are expensive, and people are valuable. Suicide bombing is not a good strategy, especially when that bomb is super expensive. Plus, it's not like anything was ever stated earlier that prevented the idea of ships colliding at hyperspeed. It's something that people just generally avoided because they don't want to die. One complaint, I guess I could say, is that Leia should have died when she was in outer space, but that complaint is not for storytelling purposes, it's for practical purposes. Obviously, all the old cast had to die because they were getting old, and we see this exampled in Carrie Fisher. If she had died in The Last Jedi, Leia, then they would not have had to write her out in a hurry for the fanfic sequel. I like the way Luke died. It was a very good death. He just became one with the Force. And Leia could have died in space. If Carrie Fisher had not died, then I see no problem with Leia surviving that the way she did. Like, if she had come out of it completely unharmed, maybe there's something to complain about there. But she did pretty much go into a coma. And yes, she didn't have any experience actually using the Force, so it is a little out of the blue. But still, she had good genes for it, and she was on the verge of death. She could have been dreaming the whole thing, really, and just accidentally saved her own life, and just used the Force on instinct. Because in some way, that's pretty much what the Force is anyway. It's a feeling-based power. So instincts should be pretty closely tied to it. Oh, right. Some people were complaining that Star Wars has fuel now? Yeah, Star Wars always had fuel. You just never knew about it. This isn't Star Trek. They can't replicate the things they need to keep going. In fact, even Star Trek couldn't just use their replicators to replicate antimatter. They probably charge their lightsabers when you're not looking. Moving on to my last contention. This is another angry one that I have to put up with so many times on the internet, and that is power scaling. Specifically, when people debate who can beat who online, they'll say this person's island level, this person's city level, this person's planetary, galaxies, universal level. It's all so arbitrary and lazy. And you see this most often from Dragon Ball stands. I like Dragon Ball, but its power scaling is ridiculous. They kept, for a short time there in Dragon Ball Z, they were telling you their power levels. And then they stopped, partially because the numbers got too big very quickly, but also because you're not supposed to do it that way. You're not supposed to measure a person's strength just by a number, which is basically what people are doing when they say island level, planetary level, galaxy level. They're just trying to put power levels on, which is a very Dragon Ball Z type thing to do. And it is not a good argument for how a person can win. For instance, Light Yagami, definitely not planetary level. He can't destroy a planet, but he can kill anybody just by writing their name in the Death Note. Light Yagami could kill Goku. It all depends on the circumstance that you're given. Obviously, in a tournament-style battle where they just meet each other for the first time on stage, Light doesn't stand a chance. But if you just throw him into the world of Dragon Ball with his Death Note and tell him to kill Goku, he's gonna do it. He might have some trouble early on because Goku's real name may or may not be Kakarot, but Vegeta never stops calling him Kakarot, so he'll figure it out. If Goku doesn't work in Death Note, then Kakarot would. But back to it being arbitrary. Like, Frieza's planetary. He can destroy a planet. But sometimes it takes longer. How long does it have to take in order to be considered planetary? Because I guarantee you, there are certain characters in fiction who can destroy a planet, but it would take a lot of effort and a lot of time. And of course, they certainly wouldn't do it because they live on said planet. Like, Saitama is planetary, at least planetary level. I don't even like calling them planetary level because that's a stupid metric for articulating someone's power. But he can absolutely destroy the Earth by punching down hard enough. If he puts everything he has into it, maybe even less, he would absolutely crack the Earth wide open with a punch. Goku cannot do that. In this sort of way, Dragon Ball is actually kind of inconsistent in its power levels because their power keeps going up and up and up and up to crazy heights, and yet they can't punch a planet to destroy it. They still have to use techniques. They have to use energy beams. Like, as crazy as Dragon Ball Z's power system gets, it will never be to the point where people are fighting and destroying planets like Gurren Lagann. But even though Gurren Lagann can destroy multiple galaxies, I wouldn't necessarily say Gurren Lagann can beat Goku. because power level is more than just numbers. It's more than just raw feats. Goku is highly adaptable and a much better fighter than Gurren Lagann. So he might be able to pull through eventually. But I can't say for sure, because obviously if Gurren Lagann is stepping on galaxies, Goku would, like, scratch his toe at best. And Goku might have really good battle sense, but he doesn't have the intelligence to really figure out a way to beat an opponent that gigantic. Or maybe he does. Like, he could drill into Gurren Lagann, and then he'll become a virus in the system, so to speak. But another thing that Dragon Ball is inconsistent about is speed feats. Early in Dragon Ball, Piccolo shoots a special beam cannon at Raditz, and Raditz dodges, and Piccolo says, how can he dodge light? Because Piccolo's attack was so much stronger than Piccolo's eyes could follow that he thought he was shooting it at light speed. But he wasn't. Later, way later, in Dragon Ball Super, another character comes along who claims he can move at the speed of light. This is also not true. Anytime Dragon Ball says a character moves at light speed, it's really just faster than anybody can perceive. Therefore, oh, it must be light speed, because we can't measure it. But we know it's not light speed because there is a technique in Dragon Ball that actually moves at the speed of light, called instant transmission. If somebody ever moves faster than instant transmission, then you could probably argue that that person can move faster than the speed of light. Hopefully that never happens, because that would be dumb, because anytime you move faster than the speed of light, you go back in time. This is why Fire Force, which I need to do a video on, has one of the best representations of light speed combat that I've ever seen. It actually feels like he's fighting at the speed of light. They're not just telling us he's moving at light speed. But because of this, because of Dragon Ball and other such animes that just tell you instead of showing you, and people just accept it and think, there are people out there who think Goku is several times faster than the speed of light. He's not. That's impossible. And if the anime says he is, that's just bad writing. And you have to learn to accept that. Back to the arbitrariness, which I keep getting sidetracked on. Yeah, how long does it take to destroy a planet to consider yourself planetary level? But on an easier note, what if you're calling yourself island level, or country level, or nation level? Nation is built out of people. You can have small nation, big nation. How long does it have to take for you to be considered nation level? How do you have to kill the nation overnight? Can you take a week and still be considered nation level? A month? A year? It's arbitrary. Long story short, Superman and Saitama would curb stomp Goku. That's just a fact. He's not built to defeat them. Now, would Superman defeat Saitama? That's another question. If Superman can survive one punch, then yes. Otherwise, probably not gonna happen. But it's not a zero chance, because if Superman gets... Because, like, Saitama's not gonna want to punch Superman right out the gate. So if Superman picks up Saitama and throws him into space and doesn't let him land on the moon, then he'll probably win, because Saitama cannot breathe in space. Which really makes me wonder how Saitama sneezed on Jupiter. They haven't animated that part yet, as far as I know. So I'll have to figure that out eventually. Anyway, long story short, stop scaling powers like that. Stop saying this person's island level, this person's planetary level, blah, 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 blah. It's dumb. It is a lazy argument that does not take into consideration skill, technique, hacks powers, and circumstances. So just stop it. And that's everything I had to complain about on this episode. I've been wanting to do that for a long time, but kept putting it off. Oh, and back to The Force Awakens. The only part I didn't like about Force Awakens was R2-D2 just randomly waking up for no reason. Otherwise, it was a great movie. The complaints about that it's just reusing plot points from previous Star Wars is dumb, because history repeats itself all the time. If it was the original cast going through all the same things over again, that would be a valid complaint. But it's the next generation doing these very similar events. And that is actually a good story. Alright, I gotta start working on some anime reviews. I'm actually a little overwhelmed about how many animes I want to make a review on right now. I'm thinking I'm gonna bundle a bunch of them together and then do a couple by themselves, maybe. I don't know. It's just another thing I keep putting off. And unfortunately, as long as I put it off, the list grows longer. Anyway, see you next time.